Chapter 1. The Debt That Changed Everything. Seraphina. I knew the moment I stepped into Inferno that I had just made a deal with the devil. It wasn't the pounding bass that vibrated through the floor, or the scent of spiced liquor and sin clinging to the air like a second skin. It wasn't even the woman draped in diamonds being led by a man with blood on his knuckles. No. It was the man watching me from the shadows of the very important person lounge. Eyes like shattered glass and fire, a presence that made the air too heavy to breathe. Power wound around him like smoke, like he didn't just own the room, he was the room. And when his eyes met mine, I felt it in my blood. I should have turned around. I should have walked out the way I came in. But I didn't, because I was desperate, because I needed the money, because my father had disappeared 5 years ago and left nothing but rumors and unpaid debts behind, because my mother was dying, and because the school had just emailed me that my scholarship was revoked due to financial irregularity. So when Diego, the sleek, snake-eyed man who ran Inferno's underground hiring desk, told me the job was simple, I swallowed my pride and signed the NDA. The pay was more than I could make in a month of nursing homes or bartending. I just had to serve drinks, smile, keep quiet, no touching, no questions, no running. What he didn't say was that this wasn't a regular club, it was a front, a fortress, a kingdom ruled by a mafia god, and that god had just noticed me. I wore a black satin corset that cinched my waist too tightly, paired with a slitted silk skirt that grazed the tops of my thighs. My heels made my legs look longer, my movements slower, just the way Diego liked it. I carried a silver tray filled with top-shelf whiskey and vintage brandy, weaving through velvet booths and dangerous men. But when I reached the very important person section, my breath caught. He was there, sitting at the head of a semicircle booth like a king on his throne. Alessio Valenti. His name wasn't just whispered in the streets, it owned them. The Valenti crime family had roots buried deeper than the city's foundations. Drugs, arms, real estate, politics, you name it, Alessio controlled it. And no one, not even the police, dared cross him. He didn't look up when I set the drink down in front of him. Not at first. I studied him, idiot that I was, mid-30s, tailored charcoal suit hugging his broad shoulders. Black hair, thick and swept back like he didn't give a damn but still looked lethal doing it. His lips were full, unsmiling, the kind of mouth that promised both sin and silence. A scar curved faintly along his jaw, like a secret someone once tried to carve out of him. And then, he moved. He looked at me, and I forgot how to breathe. New girl. His voice was low, gravel-coated silk. He didn't ask. He knew. Yes, sir. My voice wavered before I could stop it. He tapped the rim of the glass but didn't drink. What's your name? I swallowed. Seraphina. His smile was slow and unsettling, fitting, an angel in hell. A ripple of unease curled up my spine. He tilted his head. Do you always look that frightened? Only when I should be, I said before I could stop myself. A sharp intake of breath from one of his men, a pause that felt like eternity. Then, he laughed, just once. A short, cold sound that didn't touch his eyes. Ballsy, he murmured. Stay after your shift, Seraphina. I'm not, you are now. He leaned back, fingers lacing behind his head like he had all the time in the world. I have an offer for you. I should have said no. But when the shift ended and I returned to the back room to change, there was a card on my locker. No name, just an embossed gold key and a suite number. Upstairs, I held it in shaking fingers. I thought about the eviction notice sitting on my kitchen counter, the hospital bills, the tuition email. I thought about the way his voice had curled around my name like a leash, and I climbed the stairs anyway. His suite was larger than my entire apartment. Minimalist, dark marble and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline like he was the god of it all. He stood with his back to me, glass in hand, staring out into the night. He didn't turn. So you know who I am? Yes. You know what I do? Yes. And you know this isn't a fairy tale. My voice was barely a whisper. No. He turned then. And everything changed. Intrigue me, Seraphina. He stalked closer, and I could feel the weight of him before he touched me. Most women try to seduce me. You resist. That's new, and not for sale. His eyes darkened. No, but your time is. He stopped inches away. And one night, he he said. With me. No strings, no promises. Just you and me, and enough pleasure to make you forget you ever needed saving. I should have slapped him. Instead, I asked, and after? Sen you walk away with $10,000 and a memory that no man will ever top. His hand ghosted down my jaw, a barely there caress. Unless you come back for more. Chapter 2, One Night with the Devil. Seraphina. He stood so close I could feel the heat of him. A man carved from steel and smoke. Everything about him screamed danger. From the way he watched me like I was a puzzle he was already dismantling in his mind, to the way the room itself seemed to pulse in sync with his heartbeat. Alessio Valenti, the most dangerous man in the city, and he was offering me a deal no sane woman should ever accept. One night in exchange for $10,000. I should have run. But instead I found myself whispering, "Why me?" His gaze dragged down my body like it was his to own. "Because you don't belong in a place like this, and that makes me want to ruin you." A shiver slid down my spine. I hated that my body reacted to him. I hated that my pulse raced, that the air felt too thick, that even though my mind screamed no, my body whispered yes. Maybe it was the money. Maybe it was the power he radiated, magnetic and soul deep. Or maybe I was just as broken as the world he ruled, because I said the words that sealed my fate. Then ruin me. He didn't move at first. He just stared at me with those obsidian eyes, unreadable and cold. And then he turned. Come. I followed him into the bedroom like a lamb walking willingly into the lion's den. It wasn't like anything I expected. No red silk sheets, no mirrors or chains. It was minimal, immaculate, dark mahogany wood and a king-sized bed with charcoal gray linens. The walls were bare, the floor silent beneath my heels. The only sound was my breath, and his. He unbuttoned his suit jacket, slow and deliberate, letting it slide from his shoulders and land in a careful fold on the chair, then the cuffs of his shirt, the buttons, one by one, exposing the kind of body sculpted by war, not vanity, scars across muscle, a brutal map of survival. He didn't rush, he was in control. I was trembling when his hands came up to cut my jaw. Last chance, Piccola. Say no, and I'll let you leave untouched. But if you say yes... His voice dipped, brushing my skin. There's no halfway with me. And I licked my lips. Sinai already said yes. And that was all it took. The first kiss wasn't soft. It wasn't gentle. It was ownership. His mouth crashed into mine like fire against ice. Dominant. Consuming. I gasped, and he took the sound, swallowing it like it belonged to him. His tongue explored my mouth with the confidence of a man who had already undressed me in his mind. He pulled me to him, our bodies flush. I felt the hard line of his arousal against my stomach, and my knees went weak. In one smooth motion, he lifted me into his arms and carried me to the bed. "You're trembling," he murmured against my throat. "I'm not afraid of you," I lied. "Good." He kissed the spot just beneath my ear. "Because you should be..." His hands were fire on my skin, sliding up the hem of my skirt, pushing the silk higher until he found the lace of my panties. He tore them away with one sharp tug. No hesitation, he growled. He kissed down my neck, teeth grazing, lips soothing. My corset fell away, and his breath caught for just a second when he saw me. Fucking angel! His mouth found my breast, and I arched into him, lost in sensation. His hands explored every inch of me, mapping me like he wanted to memorize my body. When he finally slid 2 fingers between my thighs, I cried out, "So wet for me already," he whispered, voice thick. "Do you even know what you do to me?" I couldn't answer. I was too far gone. He rose to his feet, shedding the last of his clothes. And then I saw him. Hard, thick, beautiful, terrifying. He climbed over me, pinning me with his body. "Look at me, Seraphina," he said, eyes burning. "I want to see you fall apart." When he entered me, it was too much, too deep, too good. I cried out, and he froze. "You okay?" I nodded, breathless. "Don't stop." And he didn't. He took me hard and slow, deep and possessive, like he wanted to brand himself into my soul. Every thrust was a promise and a punishment. He kissed me like he hated the fact that he wanted me. He whispered things in Italian, dark, filthy, beautiful things I didn't understand but felt in my bones. And when I came apart beneath him, it was like falling from a cliff. "Alessio," I gasped. my nails digging into his back. He followed seconds later, his body shuddering, his name a curse and a prayer on my lips. When it was over, he didn't move. He just held me there, his chest rising and falling against mine. I don't know how long we stayed like that, but when he finally pulled away, I already felt the emptiness. He stood, collected his clothes, and turned his back, and that was when I realized the truth. This man didn't do intimacy. He did power. He did control. And now, he had both. He handed me an envelope as I dressed, my fingers fumbling with the torn remains of my panties. "Insure your payment, and a driver will take you home." I looked at him. "That's it?" He paused in the doorway. "So you got what you wanted, Seraphina. Be careful what you wish for next time." And then he was gone. Just like that. Like I was just another deal made, another girl discarded. But what neither of us knew was that night had already changed everything. Because deep inside me, something new had just taken root. And in a few weeks I'd realized that I wasn't just walking away with $10,000. I was walking away pregnant with the Mafia Boss's baby. Chapter 3. Something is wrong with me. Seraphina. The envelope was still sitting on my nightstand, untouched. $10,000, stacked in perfect, unforgiving hundreds. I hadn't even opened it. Not because I didn't need it, I did. Desperately, but because every time I looked at it, I remembered the way Alessio Valenti had walked out of that suite without a second glance. No kiss goodbye, no number, no empty promise of "I'll call you." Just his back, broad and cold and final, disappearing behind the door like he'd never touched me at all. I told myself I was fine, that I wasn't the first woman to sleep with a man like him and leave with more shame than satisfaction. But by the end of the week, I knew something was wrong. It started small. I'd open the fridge and recoil at the smell of leftovers I normally wouldn't think twice about. Coffee made my stomach churn. The sight of eggs made me gag. Then came the exhaustion. I was sleeping 10, 11 hours at a time and still waking up feeling like I'd run a marathon in my dreams. My back ached. My mood was a mess. I snapped at my professors, cried over spilled tea, and burst out laughing during an anatomy lecture on reproductive organs. And then came the final sign. My period was late. 10 days late. I sat on the floor of my tiny bathroom, knees drawn to my chest, heart thudding like a war drum. I'd bought the test in secret, slipping into a 24-hour pharmacy on the other side of town with a hoodie over my head and sunglasses despite it being night. I'd paid in cash and avoided eye contact, praying no one recognized me. The test was on the counter now, positive. 2 bold, undeniable pink lines that stared up at me like a sentence. I was pregnant. I was pregnant. The words kept echoing through my mind like a scream in a cathedral. No matter how many times I said it silently, they still didn't make sense. I had sex once, one night, one mistake, one transaction, but apparently once was enough for Alessio Valenti. The man was a living, breathing curse. Even his DNA was unforgiving. I didn't tell anyone. Not my best friend Lila, who would have driven me straight to a clinic. Not my professor, who'd probably chalk it up to irresponsible college behavior. Not my mother, who didn't even know I worked at Inferno, let alone what I'd done in one of its luxury suites. This was mine, my mistake, my consequence, my baby. I pressed a hand to my stomach, flat and unchanged. There's no way he'd want this. Alessio Valenti didn't do complications. He didn't do emotions. He barely did names. If he found out I was carrying his child, no. He couldn't know. This wasn't a mafia romance novel. He wouldn't fall to his knees and beg to be a father. He'd see the baby as a weakness, a liability, something to be controlled or erased. I can't let him find out. The next day, I didn't go to class. I didn't go to work. I didn't even leave the apartment. I just sat on my couch in the dark, holding the test and listening to the silence like it had answers. But by day 4, I realized silence wasn't going to be enough. I needed help. I made an appointment at a women's clinic under a fake name. It wasn't fancy, just a small beige building tucked between a laundromat and a taco stand. But it was quiet, private. The receptionist didn't ask questions. The nurse didn't recognize me. I changed into the paper gown. I lay on the cold table. I watched the screen as the ultrasound wand slid over my stomach. The tech squinted. Then she smiled gently. There it is, she whispered. A grain of rice, a flicker, a heartbeat. I burst into tears, not because I was scared, though I was, not because I was alone, though I was that too, but because in that single, fragile moment, I felt it. A tiny, impossible life growing inside me. My baby. His baby. When I got home that night, I finally opened the envelope. The money was real, crisp, counted. There was a single card tucked between the bills. Not a name. Not a number. Just a black velvet business card with a silver embossed letter fifth. It made my stomach turn, and not from the nausea. He hadn't forgotten me. But he hadn't called either. He was waiting, watching, letting me think I'd walked away. But men like Alessio didn't let go. They hunted. I fell asleep on the couch, clutching a heating pad to my belly and whispering promises I wasn't sure I could keep. "I'll protect you," I murmured to the invisible thing inside me. No matter what, but deep in my heart, I knew the truth. I couldn't hide forever. Because Alessio Valenti always got what he wanted. And he wasn't done with me yet. Chapter 4. You're hiding something from me. Seraphina. I stood outside Inferno for almost 20 minutes before I finally walked in. The neon glow of the club's sign pulsed above my head like a warning. Every beat of its red light seemed to sync with my heart, erratic, terrified, furious. I wasn't the same girl who had walked through those doors 2 weeks ago. I'd come here to survive. Now I was fighting to protect something I hadn't expected to love. And that something was growing inside me, minute by minute, heartbeat by heartbeat. I pulled my black leather jacket tighter around my body. It was baggy enough to hide the changes, at least for now. My curves hadn't thickened yet, but I felt different. My body wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to someone else now. Someone tiny, fragile, silent. Someone whose presence haunted me with every breath. Lila met me at the staff entrance. Her brows furrowed the second she saw me. "Jesus, Sarah. Where the hell have you been? You ghosted me for 2 weeks. Are you okay?" "No. I was pregnant with the most dangerous man's child in the entire city. I hadn't slept more than 3 hours in days. I cried at car commercials and gagged every time I smelled fish, and I was about to walk into a club where the father of my unborn baby was likely somewhere in the shadows watching me like a hawk." But I forced a smile. "Yeah, I'm okay, just needed a break." Lila didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes, but she didn't press. That's what I loved about her. She didn't push. She'd just wait until I broke down and offered the truth myself. And part of me wanted to. God, I wanted to tell someone. I wanted to scream, "I'm pregnant," and let the shock and terror out of my chest. But not here. Not now. "Come on," she sighed. "Boss is gonna be pissed. You disappeared on a weekend shift." My stomach twisted. The boss, Alessio. Was he pissed? Or worse, indifferent? I wasn't sure which would hurt more. Alessio, the second Seraphina, stepped back into the club. I knew. It was in the way she walked, shoulders tighter, steps slower. Her body moved like it was hiding something. She tried to pretend she didn't see me. Smart. I let her play the game for a while. I watched from the very important person, mezzanine, sipping whiskey I didn't taste, ignoring the blonde woman pressing herself against my side like she thought I was in the mood to play. I wasn't. Not when the girl I hadn't been able to stop thinking about for 2 damn weeks finally walked back into my world like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't vanished the morning after I fecked her into the mattress and paid her to disappear, except she had disappeared. I'd sent a man to follow her that night, just to make sure she got home safely. But she'd changed addresses, burned the SIM card in her phone, quit school, quit life, gone underground. Like she was running. That had never happened to me before. Women didn't run from me. They clung, begged, obeyed. But Seraphina De Luca? She disappeared like a ghost and didn't even spend the money I gave her. And now she was back, hair pulled into a messy bun, dark circles under her eyes, skin pale. She looked like hell. She looked different. She looked scared. And I wanted to know why. Seraphina. I kept my head down. I cleaned tables, refilled glasses, smiled at drunks. I pretended everything was normal, even though I felt Alessio's gaze like a knife at the base of my neck. He didn't approach me all night. He didn't need to. His silence was louder than any scream. It wasn't until closing time that I saw him. I was walking to the back room when I turned the corner and slammed straight into a wall of muscle. Not a wall, him. Alessio Valenti. "Hey, slow down," he said, his voice a low, deadly rumble. I looked up, breath catching in my throat. He hadn't shaved. His stubble was darker, jaw sharper. The faintest bruising under his eyes told me he hadn't been sleeping either. He was still the most dangerously beautiful thing I'd ever seen. "Sorry," I said quickly, stepping to move around him. He blocked me. "I've been patient, Seraphina. Don't mistake that for weakness." I swallowed. "What do you want?" His eyes searched my face. "You disappeared. I needed time." "You needed permission, Piccola. You work for me." The possessiveness in his voice was like a chain wrapping around my throat. "I wasn't aware I belonged to you," I snapped. His eyes darkened. I regretted the words immediately. "You gave yourself to me, Seraphina. That night wasn't a game to me. That surprised me. He didn't do feelings. He did control. Power. But there was something raw in his voice. Something dangerous. I shifted, anxiety twisting in my gut. The nausea was rising again. I needed to get away. "I'm tired, Alessio. Can we not do this tonight?" He didn't move. "You're pale." I said, "I'm tired. You've lost weight. I've been busy." His hand reached out, curling around my wrist. "You're hiding something from me." I froze. Time stopped. The hallway was too quiet. His grip was warm, gentle even, but the tension in his body screamed of restraint, like if I told one more lie, he'd snap. I licked my lips, heart pounding against my ribs like it wanted to escape. "I'm not hiding anything." He stared at me for a long moment, so long I thought he might see straight through me. Then he dropped my hand. "Get some rest," he said flatly. "You look like hell." And then he walked away. I nearly collapsed. But I couldn't break down. Not here. Not now. I pressed a trembling hand over my still flat stomach and whispered the truth he could never know. "You're his. And I'll protect you. No matter the cost." Chapter 5. I want to know everything about you, Alessio. The silence in the club was suffocating after hours. No music, no voices. Just the hum of security cameras, the soft creak of the ancient wood beneath my boots, and the distant clicking of keyboard keys from one of my men running surveillance in the back. But I wasn't looking at the monitors. I was looking at a man's trembling hands. Enzo was my most trusted fixer. He'd done everything from tailing crooked politicians to torching entire buildings when needed. Clean, fast, loyal. But right now, he was sweating. Because I wasn't saying a word, he had just handed me a thick folder. Inside, everything he could find on Seraphina De Luca. Everything, and yet, nothing. "She's good at disappearing," he muttered, almost like an apology. "No paper trail. Deleted social. Phone's a burner. She moved out of her apartment 2 weeks ago and hasn't enrolled for the new semester at school." "Where is she staying now?" I asked coldly. Enzo hesitated. "I don't know." My eyes snapped up. Wrong answer. "I'm giving you 24 hours, I said, voice low and lethal. "I want her address, her schedule. I want to know who she talks to, what she eats, where she pisses, and how often she cries at night." "Find her," Enzo swallowed, nodded, and backed out of my office like it was on fire. She was hiding something. I knew it. And it wasn't just fear, it was guilt. Pain, shame. I'd seen it on 1,000 faces before, usually on men who thought they could outsmart me, who thought they could take something that belonged to me and vanish into the shadows like I wouldn't notice. But Seraphina wasn't a thief. She hadn't taken from me. No. I had taken from her. Her first time, her trust, her control. I'd thought I was doing her a favor, offering her power in exchange for pleasure. But what if that wasn't what she'd felt? What if she had left not because she was scared of me, but because she was scared for herself? And then the memory hit me again. The way her body had felt beneath mine, trembling but never stiff. The way she'd cried out, not with pain, but with want. The way her eyes had locked on mine like she wanted to memorize me. Something had passed between us that night, something I hadn't felt in years. And now? Now it was gone. And I wanted it back. Seraphina. I puked up the banana I forced myself to eat and spent the next 20 minutes crying on the cold tile of my bathroom floor. It was morning sickness. Again. I was 7.5 weeks now, still early, still small. But everything was harder. My emotions, my body, my fear. The weight of the secret I was carrying felt like it was pressing into my lungs. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus, couldn't stop thinking about him. Alessio, the way he looked at me in the hallway like he knew something was off, like he felt the shift between us even if he didn't understand it. He would find out. Eventually. That much I was sure of. He had money, men, power, a goddamn army at his disposal. And I was just one girl. One girl who made one reckless, dangerous mistake. Now it was living inside me, and I didn't regret it. That scared me most of all. Lila banged on my door that afternoon. "Open up, Sarah," she called through the door. "I brought food. Don't make me break this down." I let her in. She took one look at me and gasped. "Jesus, are you dying?" I looked at myself in the mirror later and understood why. I was pale, my cheeks sunken, my lips dry. I looked like a shadow of myself. "I'm fine," I lied again. "You've lost 10 pounds in 2 weeks," she said bluntly, setting down a paper bag filled with soup and crackers. "Eat something. Or better yet, tell me what the hell is going on." I wanted to, I really did. But I just said, "I'm tired, that's all." She gave me a long, hard look. "Does this have anything to do with that night you disappeared? The night after the," she lowered her voice, "private room?" I flinched. That was answer enough. Her voice softened. "Sarah, did something happen? Did he hurt you?" "No," I whispered. "He didn't hurt me. But he had changed me. Forever." That night, I dreamed of him. Of that sweet, of the heat between our bodies. Of the way he'd looked down at me when I shattered around him, like he'd seen straight through to my soul. I woke up in tears, my hands curled protectively over my stomach. "And have to leave," I whispered into the dark. "And have to go before he finds out. Because if Alessio Valenti learned I was pregnant with his child, he wouldn't let me go. He'd own me. And I didn't know if I was strong enough to survive that." Alessio, 2 days later, Enzo delivered. She was living in a crumbling studio on the edge of the East End, paid in cash, used a fake name for utilities, worked double shifts at a family diner 4 nights a week. She hadn't touched a dime of the money I gave her. Good girl. But the photos disturbed me. She looked thinner, pale, tired. One photo caught her sitting at a bus stop, curled over herself, hand clutched to her stomach like she was in pain. Not fear. Pain. I couldn't stop staring at it. "You think she's sick?" I asked Enzo. He shrugged. "Maybe. Looks like morning sickness if you ask me." The glass in my hand shattered before I even realized I'd crushed it. "Get the car. Chapter 6. Tell me whose baby you're carrying." Seraphina. I was sitting on the floor, wrapped in a threadbare blanket, eating dry crackers and watching a sitcom with the volume low, because laughter felt like a luxury I didn't deserve, when I heard the knock. No, not a knock. A pound, 3 thunderous strikes against the thin wood of my door, each one vibrating through the floor, through my body, through the bones of my soul. I froze. Not just because of the sound, but because I knew who it was. Even before I moved, even before I checked the peephole. My heart recognized him before my eyes did. Alessio Valenti. Dressed in black, expression unreadable. He looked like death and desire all wrapped in one, and he had found me. The door creaked open 2 inches before the chain caught it. I kept it there, clinging to that last barrier between me and the man I'd spent 2 weeks trying to forget. "Seraphina." His voice was calm. Too calm. "You shouldn't be here," I whispered. "You disappeared," he said, his tone deceptively soft. Again. I didn't answer. "Take the chain off." "No. Take it off." I held my ground for 1 more breath. 2. Then my fingers betrayed me, slipping up and sliding the latch free. He stepped inside like he owned the place, like he owned me, and I hated how my knees went weak when our eyes met. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked, and looked, and looked. At the tiny apartment, at the secondhand furniture, the empty soup bowl on the floor, the cracked window taped over with clear plastic, the garbage bag by the door filled with donated maternity clothes I hadn't dared unpack. His gaze was everywhere, and then it landed on me. "You're sick," he said. "No, you've lost weight. I'm eating. You're pale. It's winter." He stepped closer. "You're lying." I wrapped the blanket tighter around me. "Why do you even care?" His eyes burned. "Don't insult me. I'm not yours," I snapped. He tilted his head slightly, like a predator watching prey try to bare its teeth. "Aren't you?" "No." He moved again, smooth, lethal. His hand reached out, slow and deliberate, and cupped the side of my face. The moment he touched me, I cracked. The burn behind my eyes turned to tears. My body swayed forward like it wanted him to hold me, to protect me, to stay, but I pulled back. Too late. His gaze dropped. And then, he saw it. My hand had fallen away from my stomach when I recoiled. His eyes locked onto the soft swell below my sweater. Not much, barely there, but there. And suddenly the room wasn't quiet anymore. It was charged. His voice was a whisper. "You're pregnant." I turned away. He grabbed my arm, not hard, just firm. "Look at me." I shook my head. "Seraphina." Sentai said no. I yanked free and stumbled back until my spine hit the kitchen counter. And then, for the first time since I'd known him, I saw shock on Alessio Valenti's face. Real, pure, undiluted shock. "And you're pregnant," he repeated, like the words weren't computing. "I don't owe you anything," I said, trembling. "Not an explanation, not a story, not even a name on a birth certificate." He stepped forward again. I backed away, and didn't tell me. He growled. "So you didn't ask." "Sentai shouldn't have to ask." "Why not? Because you paid me?" He flinched. "That made me bolder. So you think throwing money at me gave you rights? That you could own my body and everything that comes out of it?" He ran both hands through his hair, pacing now. "Ain't I kicked you once?" He started, and I recoiled again. His eyes snapped to mine, and didn't mean it like that. "In Mace you did." "And no," he said. "It meant, I fecked you once, and I haven't been able to think about anything else since. I knew something happened that night. I felt it. And then you disappeared, like it meant nothing. It meant everything to me," I whispered. The silence that followed was deafening. He stopped pacing. He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. I didn't expect him to soften. I didn't expect him to kneel in front of me like a man undone. But that's what he did. He slowly dropped to his knees, one hand on the counter, one reaching out, but not touching. His voice broke when he asked, "Is it mine?" My throat closed. Tears slid down my cheeks without my permission. Yes. And just like that, the breath left his body. He reached out finally and laid a hand gently, so gently, on my stomach. "You're carrying my child," he whispered, reverent. I expected fury, possession, demand. Instead, his thumb brushed over my belly with heartbreaking softness. "How far along?" he asked. "Almost 8 weeks." He shut his eyes, breathed in like he was tasting the moment. And when he opened them again, something had changed. Not anger, not panic, purpose. "I'm going to take care of you." "No." His head snapped up. "No?" he repeated, stunned. "You're not going to take control of this, of me. You don't get to own this baby just because you want to." He rose slowly, towering, dangerous again. "I'm not offering, Seraphina." My heart pounded. He took one step toward me. "This baby is mine." Another step. "You're mine." I turned and ran into the bedroom. He followed, but stopped at the door. Didn't enter. Didn't force it. He stared at me from the threshold like a wolf who'd just realized the lamb had claws. "I want to know everything about you," he said. I shook my head. He smiled. It wasn't kind. "I'm not going anywhere." And then he left. Just like that, without another word. The door closed with a soft click that felt more final than a gunshot. I collapsed onto the bed and wept, because I believed him. He wasn't going anywhere. Chapter 7. You belong to me, even if you hate me for Seraphina. I thought he would disappear after that night. Thought maybe I had imagined the way his voice cracked when he touched my stomach, the way he looked at me like I had turned into something sacred. I thought maybe, just maybe, he would walk away and let me go. He didn't. By the next morning, everything had changed. The landlord knocked on my door and handed me a thick envelope. "Your rent's been paid for the next 6 months, he muttered, looking confused. "By a guy in a suit. Said to tell you don't run again. You in some kind of trouble?" I slammed the door in his face. Inside the envelope was a single note, written in sharp, precise handwriting I recognized immediately. "If you want to raise my child in this dump, fine. But at least do it without worrying about rent. A." I ripped the note in half. But the rent was paid. The next envelope came 2 hours later. This one was slid under my door silently. Inside were 3 things: a sleek black credit card with my name on it, a folded page of OBGYN recommendations, some of the most expensive specialists in the city, and another note: use the card, book the doctor, or I will. I flushed the paper down the toilet, and still, he didn't stop. By day 3, I was getting text messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Unknown, you need iron. Your blood work was low 2 months ago, wasn't it? Unknown, stop eating crackers and drink more water. Unknown, Lila's going to call you, answer it. I nearly threw my phone out the window, but he was right, about the blood work, about the iron, about the dehydration, and when Lila did call that night, her voice was tight with worry. I just got offered $5,000 to come check on you, she said, from a man named Alessio. I groaned. He's insane. He's scary. But Sarah, if a man like that is willing to throw money at your friends just to make sure you're okay, maybe he's not trying to hurt you. No, I said flatly, he's trying to own me. Maybe he just doesn't know any other way to care. That stuck with me. The next day, I quit my job at the diner. It wasn't a choice. When I showed up for my shift, the manager handed me a white envelope and said I'd been given an indefinite leave of absence, with pay. I didn't have to ask. There was a business card inside the envelope from Valenti Holdings, and a new phone. A black iPhone with no apps, no contacts, just one name in the call list, Alessio. I was trembling by the time I got back to my apartment, and there he was, waiting for me on the steps, leaning against the railing like he hadn't just upended my entire life in 3 days, like he belonged there, like he belonged to me. You don't have the right to do this, I hissed as I walked past him. He followed me inside. Didn't even wait for permission this time. You're carrying my child, and that gives you the right to control me? I spun on him. To buy my apartment, my job, my friends? I didn't buy them. I'm protecting you. You think smothering someone is love? No, he said coldly. And I think letting the mother of my child waste away in a filthy diner while some sweaty cook screams orders in her ear is neglect. So you don't even know me. I know enough. I know that you flinch when someone raises their voice. I know that you've been alone for too long. I know that you sleep curled around your stomach now like you're already trying to shield it from the world. Tears stung my eyes. He was watching me, always. You've been spying on me, I whispered. He didn't deny it. Instead, he walked past me, slowly, methodically. He circled the room, examining the walls, the windows, the locks, like he was memorizing it all. Then he turned back to me. And you're not safe here. And fine. And no, you're not. He stalked closer, eyes locked to mine. Do you even have a lock on the back window? Do you know how easy it would be for someone to break in? You think I'm the worst thing that could happen to you, Seraphina? I'm not. I'm the only one who's trying to keep you safe. You're trying to own me. No, his voice dropped. I'm trying to keep you. The silence that fell was heavier than anything I'd ever known. Then he said it, the words that would change everything. You belong to me, Seraphina. Even if you hate me for it. Alessio, she didn't scream when I said it. She didn't cry. She just stood there, shaking, staring at me like I was both her salvation and her nightmare. And maybe I was. Because I hadn't been able to sleep since I found out. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. That day at the club. That night in the suite. The way she had looked up at me when I moved inside her for the first time. Like I had stolen something from her and she didn't even want it back. She had changed me that night, more than she realized, more than I wanted to admit. And now she was carrying my child. I couldn't let her go, even if she begged, even if she ran, even if she hated me for it. I would never let her go. She curled up on the couch that night, refusing the bed even though I offered it. I didn't push her. I took the floor instead, my gun resting nearby, phone in hand, my men on rotation outside. She didn't want my protection, but I'd give it anyway. Because I'd never let what happened to my mother happen to her. Not to the mother of my child. Not to the only woman who'd ever made me feel something real. Seraphina. I woke up in the middle of the night to a strange sound. Not a bang, not a scream, breathing. Heavy, ragged breathing from across the room. I sat up slowly. Alessio was on the floor, still, eyes open. Chest heaving. He was dreaming. No, not dreaming. Reliving. I crept closer, watching as his hands clenched the blanket. His lips moved, but the words were too soft to hear. until they weren't. No, don't touch her, don't. I reached out and touched his shoulder. He shot up with a gasp, eyes wild. For a moment, I thought he might strike me. Instead, he froze, and then he collapsed forward, not into sleep, but into me. He buried his face in my lap and whispered a name. Luciana. And my heart broke. Because that was his mother's name. The one they murdered. The one he never spoke about. And in that moment, I realized something. He wasn't just trying to protect me because of the baby. He was trying to protect himself from losing everything again. Chapter 8. The Price of Being Loved by a Monster. Seraphina. It was the smell that woke me. Not the sound, not the shift in temperature. Smoke. I sat up on the couch, blinking in the dim light, heart slamming against my ribs. The windows were fogged, but the air felt wrong. The way it does before a storm or right before you're about to cry, but sharper. Metallic, burning. Then I heard it, a soft pop, like a bottle being uncorked, and then another, pop, pop. I stood slowly, barefoot, my hands instantly covering my stomach on instinct. Alessio wasn't in the room, and then, boom. The back window shattered, glass exploded inward. I screamed. The world spun as I dropped behind the couch. Someone was screaming my name, but it wasn't Alessio. I heard footsteps, 2 sets, maybe 3, men. Then suddenly, gunfire, loud, deafening, echoing off the walls like thunder in a coffin. I covered my ears and curled in on myself, sobbing. Not again, not again, not again. Then a familiar voice roared from somewhere inside the chaos. Get her out! Another shot. The front door burst open. Rough hands grabbed me. I screamed. Seraphina, it's me, Alessio. It was him. His voice like an anchor, his grip a lifeline. I couldn't see through the smoke, but I clung to him like a child. He didn't walk, he ran. Out the door, down the hall, down the stairs 2 at a time. Gunfire behind us, yelling, screams, sirens in the distance. He didn't stop until we were shoved into the back of a black SUV. Drive, he shouted. The car peeled off. I was shaking too hard to speak, too scared to ask, too shocked to process. I finally found my voice 20 minutes later, when the city disappeared behind us, and was replaced by long stretches of trees and empty roads. Who were they? Alessio didn't answer right away. His hand gripped mine so tightly it hurt. Finally, he said one word. A name. In Castellano. My heart dropped. I knew that name. Even in the shadows of the city, whispered in alleys and scrawled on walls in red paint. The Castellano crime family. Alessio's sworn enemies. Rivals in every sense of the word. Blood. Territory. Power. They knew, I said slowly. He nodded once. I know about me, about the baby. He didn't say anything. That silence told me everything. Alessio, I had failed. That was the only thought in my head as I stared at her trembling hands, her wide eyes, the smudges of ash on her cheek. They'd gotten too close, close enough to break a window, close enough to throw a Molotov cocktail through it, close enough to make her scream. And it was my fault. I knew Castellano would retaliate eventually. I had hit one of their trucks last month, burned a warehouse in retaliation for what they did to one of my men. But I never thought they'd touch her. I never thought they'd find her. I underestimated their desperation, their cruelty, their greed, and now they had a target. Seraphina wasn't just some girl I slept with. She wasn't just the mother of my unborn child. She was leverage, and every bone in my body was on fire with rage. I'm taking you somewhere safe, I said. She didn't answer. I looked over at her, and that's when I saw it. The crack. Not in her voice, not in her body. In her trust. Her shoulders were hunched like a wounded bird. Her eyes didn't meet mine. Her arms cradled her belly like she was trying to shield the baby from me. And I knew. I was losing her. We arrived at the Valenti estate at sunrise, a massive compound outside the city, stone walls, iron gates, armed guards, the kind of place people whispered about in dark corners. I carried her inside. She didn't ask where we were, didn't fight, didn't cry. Just let me guide her to a room on the 3rd floor, a private suite with high ceilings, a fireplace, and windows that overlooked acres of forest. She sat on the edge of the bed like a ghost. I knelt in front of her, I'm going to find every man who had anything to do with this, I said, voice shaking. And I'm going to bury them. Still nothing. Say something, I begged. Please. She finally looked at me, and her words sliced deeper than any bullet. Oh, you're the reason they found me. I staggered back like she'd hit me. She stood slowly, moving to the window, arms crossed over her chest. Oh, you think you're protecting me, but all you're doing is painting a target on me. I stepped closer. No, I said, desperate now. I'm trying to keep you alive. I don't want to live like this, she shouted. With guards and gates and guns under every pillow, with your enemies watching me, following me, trying to kill me. She turned, finally, eyes full of fire and fear and heartbreak. I'm pregnant, Alessio. I'm exhausted. I'm terrified. And I don't even know who you really are. I swallowed. You know me. No, she said. I know the version of you that bought me dinner and kissed me like I mattered. I don't know this. I don't know what kind of monster you become when someone threatens what's yours. Her words echoed in the silence. A monster. Yes, that's what I was. A monster who had the power to protect her, but also the power to destroy everything she was. Seraphina. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? The room was too big, too quiet, too full of shadows. He had posted guards outside my door, not because I asked, because he decided. Like everything, and I knew there was no going back to normal. No more cheap apartments, no more waitress jobs, no more hiding. Because I had made a mistake. I had fallen into the arms of a man who was born from blood and raised by wolves, and now I was carrying his child, and there was no escaping the price of being loved by a monster. Chapter 9. The Princess of Thorns, Seraphina. I learned quickly that the Valenti estate was more prison than palace. The marble floors were cold no matter how many rugs covered them. The ceilings were too high, the chandeliers too bright. It all screamed of power, old blood-stained power, but offered no comfort. Alessio had called it safety. I called it a cage. He kept me on the 3rd floor in a private suite. Everything was customized, organic food, silk sheets, warm lighting, but it still wasn't mine. Nothing here was mine. Even the clothes in the walk-in closet had tags. A new wardrobe, hand-picked, lace-trimmed robes, soft sweaters, designer maternity dresses that still clung to my curves like I was some kind of trophy. Every day was the same. Silence, surveillance, suffocation. There were guards outside my door at all hours. I tried once to sneak down the hallway. I got as far as the stairs before a man in a black suit blocked my path. Miss Seraphina, sir's orders. Please return to your room. Sir's orders. Like I was his pet. Not his partner. Not the mother of his child. Just a kept thing behind locked doors. I tried to text Lila. No response. I tried to call the clinic to confirm a new prenatal appointment. The number was disconnected. Every time I picked up the phone, someone was listening. When I opened the laptop Alessio left on the desk, it had only one browser tab, a Valenti private network page, with scheduled medical checkups already arranged. I was being managed, polished, controlled. I screamed into a pillow that night until I couldn't breathe. 3 days passed. 3 long, crawling, colorless days. Alessio didn't visit once. Not a call, not a knock. Nothing. I tried to pretend I didn't care. Tried to convince myself the distance was good, that I needed it. But my heart betrayed me every night as I curled on the oversized bed, one hand on my belly, wondering if he was safe, or if he had just changed his mind about me. Then, on the 4th day, the silence shattered. Not with a knock, but with heels, clicking down the hallway like war drums and stilettos. The door burst open without warning, and she walked in. Tall, bronze-skinned, hair black as midnight, pulled into a high, ruthless ponytail that swayed like a blade behind her, blood-red lips, long nails like daggers, diamonds in her ears, fire in her eyes. She wore a silk dress that clung to her curves like sin, and I knew without a doubt that this woman knew Alessio intimately. Her eyes flicked over me like I was a roach. "So you're the girl," she said, her voice honeyed with venom. "The little whore who managed to get pregnant." Alessio. I was in the north wing with Rocco when I got the alert. Camilla is on the 3rd floor. My stomach dropped. I had explicitly told her to stay out of Seraphina's suite. I didn't run. I stormed, through the halls, past stunned guards, up the stairs 3 at a time. I flung the door open and stopped. Seraphina was standing in the middle of the room, barefoot, face flushed with fury, hands trembling, but not from fear, from rage. Camilla stood near the window, smiling like a panther after a kill. "Alessio," she purred. "What an interesting surprise." He didn't look at her, he looked at me, but it was too late. The damage had been done. "Seraphina, so," I said, my voice sharp, shaking, venomous. "Are you going to introduce us?" Camilla smiled, slow, serpentine. "I'm Camilla Bellante," she said, not taking her eyes off me. "Daughter of Don Matteo Bellante, of the Sicilian Bellantes." That name hit me like a slap. Even I had heard of them. One of the most brutal mafia clans in Europe. She extended her hand like we were meeting at brunch. I didn't take it. Instead, I turned to Alessio. "Tell me who she is." Camilla answered for him. "I'm his first fiancé." I stared at him. He flinched. "That was years ago," he said. "But you never broke it off," she said smoothly. "Not formally. I felt like I was going to be sick." "There was nothing between us," Alessio growled. "There was a lot between us," she countered, stepping closer. "Sex, blood, secrets, wars." She turned to me with a smile so cruel it could have cut steel. "You really think you're the first woman he's tried to protect like a porcelain doll? The first one he locked in a pretty little box and called it love?" My knees buckled. Alessio moved toward me, but I raised a hand. "Don't." "Seraphina, get out," I whispered. "What?" "Both of you." They didn't move at first. Then I screamed. "GT out." Camilla's smile widened. Alessio looked like he wanted to argue, but he knew better. He left. Camilla followed, victorious. The door clicked shut, and I crumpled to the floor, sobbing like my chest had shattered. Alessio Camilla was gone by the next morning. I made sure of it. Escorted off the grounds, her men stripped of weapons, her luggage searched, she laughed the whole way out. "You'll never be rid of me, Alessio, not completely." We bleed the same kind of red. I didn't respond. But in my chest, something was breaking. Because Seraphina hadn't spoken to me in 12 hours. And for the first time in my life, I didn't know how to fix it. Seraphina, that night, I dreamed of fire, of blood, of a baby screaming in the dark. I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. And alone, I pressed a hand to my stomach. My little secret, the only thing tethering me to a world I didn't want, and a man I couldn't stop loving, even if he destroyed me. Chapter 10. We only burn when we touch. Seraphina. It was close to midnight when I heard the knock. 3 soft taps on the heavy mahogany door. Then silence. I sat on the edge of the bed, barefoot in one of those silk robes I never asked for, legs curled up beneath me, the pale glow from the fireplace casting flickering shadows across the walls. I didn't answer. The knock came again. Seraphina. His voice was low, muffled, but unmistakable. "And so away. Please, just 5 minutes." I hesitated, then padded slowly across the room and opened the door. Only a crack. He stood on the other side, still in his black suit, tie loosened, shirt collar open, hair tousled like he'd been running his hands through it non-stop. He looked like hell. Good. I opened the door wider, but I didn't move to let him in. He didn't force it. "I'm sorry," he said simply. I crossed my arms. "For what? Letting your ex into my room? Or failing to mention she was your fiancé?" His jaw clenched. "She's not my fiancé anymore." "That's not what she said." "She's trying to manipulate you. She succeeded." That shut him up. He looked at me, really looked at me, and for once I saw the mask slip. Underneath the cold mafia exterior, under the brooding silence and the calculated dominance, there was fear. Not for himself, for me, for us. "I didn't tell you because I didn't think she mattered," he said. "You don't get to decide what matters to me," I whispered. He stepped forward. I backed up, but not fast enough. His hand brushed my arm, static, my breath hitched. "Seraphina," he breathed, voice thick with emotion. "I'm not good at this. I was raised by killers, trained by men who only taught me how to take, how to dominate, how to win." His hand rose, ghosting over my cheek, but not touching. "You're the first person I've ever wanted to keep safe. Not for business, not for control, just because it's you." I looked up at him. at the man who terrified me and thrilled me in equal measure, at the man whose child I was carrying. "I don't need your perfection, Alessio," I whispered. "I need your truth." Then, slowly, like gravity itself was pulling us together, he kissed me. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't sweet. It was fire and teeth and need. He walked me backward until my knees hit the bed. We fell into it like a storm, his lips on my neck, my shoulder, the space between my breasts, his hands everywhere, rough, possessive, reverent. I tugged at his shirt, desperate to feel skin. He pulled it over his head, revealing that brutal, beautiful body, carved from violence, painted with scars and power. He stared at me like I was a goddess he was terrified to worship. Then he kissed my stomach, one slow, trembling press of his lips against the gentle swell beneath my navel. I gasped. "I swear on my life," he murmured. "I will protect you both." And then he made love to me like it was a vow. Alessio, I undressed her like she was made of smoke. Every inch of her body was seared into my memory already, but tonight, it felt new. Because now, she wasn't just mine. She was carrying us. I laid her down, spread her thighs, and worshipped her like a sinner on his knees. Every moan she gave me, every gasp, every whispered plea, I took it as penance. She arched beneath me as I filled her body trembling like she was trying to contain something bigger than pleasure. I held her hands above her head and rocked into her with slow, deep thrusts. Her eyes met mine, raw, wrecked, and I knew I didn't want to just protect her. I wanted to belong to her. We didn't speak for a long time afterward. We just lay there, naked, breathing in the same rhythm. My hand rested over her stomach, where our child slept in silence. "Camilla won't be back," I said finally. "I don't care about her," she replied. And maybe that was true, but I still did, because Camilla wasn't the only threat, and I hadn't told Seraphina the worst part yet. Seraphina. I thought everything would be better after that night. I thought the sex would heal the rift, the emotion would glue us back together, and in some ways, it did. Alessio was softer the next morning. He kissed my forehead before leaving. He brought me breakfast himself, sat on the bed beside me, fed me strawberries. It felt like a beginning, but then I opened the drawer to grab a sweater, and I found a file folder buried beneath the clothes. Not hidden, but not meant for me. I opened it. My hand flew to my mouth. Inside were photos of me, taken weeks ago, from across the street, at my old apartment, at the diner, even one of me asleep on the couch. All time-stamped, all tagged with GPS coordinates, not by Alessio, by them, the Castellanos. The last photo was of me walking home from work. A red X was drawn across my chest, and underneath it, "Take her, alive if possible." Chapter 11, The Devil at the Gate. Seraphina. I stared at the photos until the images blurred through my tears. They'd been watching me. Before Alessio, before the pregnancy, before I knew anything. I read the scribbled order again. "Take her, alive if possible." Alive if possible. Like if I wasn't compliant, I was disposable. I clutched my stomach with one hand, the other trembling as I shoved the folder back into the drawer and slammed it shut. I didn't know how long I sat on the floor after that. Minutes, hours. All I knew was that I was no longer safe. Not even here, not even with him. Because whether or not Alessio knew about that file, he was keeping secrets. Again, when he returned that night, I didn't run to him. I sat at the window, staring into the forest behind the estate, and asked one question without turning around. "Did you know?" He was silent. My heart dropped. "I'd so found the file," I whispered. "On photos, the coordinates, the order to take me alive." I heard his footsteps pause, then a breath, quiet, controlled, guilty. "And I didn't want you to see that. So you knew." I turned, fury and betrayal surging hot through my veins. "And you hid it from me. Again. Said I was protecting you." "Stop saying that. You don't protect me by lying to me. You don't get to decide what I can or can't handle. Cindy, do when you're carrying my child," he shouted, voice echoing off the walls like thunder. My lip trembled. "And maybe you shouldn't have gotten me pregnant in the first place." He flinched like I'd slapped him, and for the first time, I saw regret in his eyes, not for what he did, but for how he did it. He crossed the room slowly and knelt in front of me, taking my hands. "I swear to you," he said quietly, "everything I've done to keep you safe. The Castellanos don't play by rules, they don't hesitate. I had intel 2 months ago they were targeting women connected to my inner circle. I didn't think." "You didn't think?" I yanked my hands free. "You watched me, you sent someone to follow me, take pictures, track me, and you let me believe it was fate that brought us together." "It was fate," he said, jaw tight. "But fate needs help in my world. I saw those photos too. I saw you smiling, walking, laughing, and I needed to protect you. You don't know what the Castellanos are capable of." "Then tell me, Alessio," I said, standing. "Tell me everything. Or let me go." His eyes darkened. "That's not an option." A chill slid down my spine. "Why not?" "Because they're coming." That night, I didn't sleep. Neither did he. He stayed near the door like a wolf guarding its den, gun holstered at his side, eyes darting to every shadow like he was waiting for death to break through the walls. And maybe he was, because at 3:47 a.m., the power cut out. All of it. The chandelier, the hallway lights, even the humming from the security system. Gone. The only thing left was the crackling of the fire and the sound of heavy boots in the hallway. "Alessio," I was already moving when the first shot rang out. One of my guards fell outside the door with a muffled groan. "Silencer." I grabbed Seraphina by the wrist and pulled her toward the panic room behind the fireplace, but she froze. "No," she said, eyes wide. "You'll be out here alone. I need you safe. Alessio." I grabbed her face, kissed her hard and fast. "I'll find you. Just go." She disappeared behind the wall panel as I slammed it shut. Then I turned toward the hallway, pulled my Glock, and became the monster I was raised to be. Seraphina, the panic room was cold. Metal walls, emergency rations, a surveillance screen showing grainy black and white footage of the estate. I watched Alessio move like a ghost through the halls, taking down 3 men in black masks before they even realized he was there. I should have been terrified, but I wasn't. Because in that moment, I remembered exactly who I'd fallen for. Not a mafia boss, not a killer, a protector. A man who would set fire to the world before he let anyone hurt me. Then one of the screens went dark, then another, then the last, and I heard the slow creak of the panic room door unlocking from the outside. That wasn't possible. No one had the code, unless... My heart stopped, and I turned just in time to see the silhouette in the doorway. It wasn't Alessio. It was Marco Castellano, tall, elegant, and smiling like the devil himself in a designer suit. "Hello, Seraphina," he purred. "Don't come any closer," I breathed, backing away. He stepped in, slow, confident, blood on his sleeve. "You're just as beautiful as they said." "Where's Alessio?" I asked, voice cracking. He tilted his head, hopefully dead. I lunged for the emergency pistol in the safe on the wall, but he was faster. He caught my wrist and twisted. I screamed. "Shh," he cooed, yanking me against his chest. "Don't want to wake the baby." Alessio, I found the blood trail near the east corridor. Too much blood, not enough bodies. And then... the panic room. The door was open, the surveillance system fried, the safe empty. Seraphina, gone. I dropped to my knees, staring at the broken door like it had betrayed me. And for the first time since I was 16 years old, I screamed. Chapter 12. His Angel in Chains. Seraphina pain came first, a deep, throbbing ache in my wrists, then my ribs, then my temple. I blinked through the darkness, my head pounding like a war drum. The air was damp, cold, metallic. Where am I? A single, flickering light bulb swayed above me, casting long shadows across a concrete room. Chains rattled when I moved. My wrists were bound, my ankles too. I was sitting on the ground, back against a cement wall, blood crusting my lower lip. I could still taste it, coppery, bitter, real. And then, a voice broke the silence. "Ince, you're awake!" Marco Castellano stepped out from the shadows like he'd been waiting for this moment his entire life. "And I was starting to worry," he said, crouching in front of me. "You've been asleep for hours." I said nothing, just stared at him. His suit was tailored perfectly, not a wrinkle out of place, but his knuckles were bruised and his smile was too calm. He touched my cheek. I jerked away. That only made his smile widen. "So much fire," he murmured. "It's no wonder Alessio risked war for you. But now..." His eyes dropped to my stomach. Now I have something he can't afford to lose. The baby. That's what he wanted. Not me, the baby. I'm not afraid of you, I lied, my voice hoarse. He leaned in, his breath warm and laced with expensive cologne. You should be. Then he stood, adjusting his cufflinks like I wasn't even worth the effort. I'm giving Alessio 72 hours, he said, to surrender, to hand over his empire, his ports, his men, his seat at the table. And if he doesn't? I asked. Marco turned back, eyes glittering. You'll die, he said. But not before I take your baby. He left me there, the steel door slamming shut behind him. And for the first time in my life, I didn't cry. Because crying didn't save anyone. Instead, I looked around the room, took in the details. The wires, the ventilation grates, the small camera in the corner of the ceiling. I counted the seconds between the flickers of the light. I slowed my breathing, and I started planning. Alessio blood coated my hands. I didn't care. 2 dead Castellano soldiers lay at my feet, their mouths still open in shocked silence. One had tried to run, the other begged. Neither lived. Marco Castellano had crossed a line he could never uncross. And now, I would burn his world to the ground. My men were loyal, but I trusted no one, not anymore. The betrayal that let Marco into my estate came from the inside. I would find the traitor, but first, I needed to find her. I paced into my war room, maps and screens glowing in the low light. My best tracker, Luca, pointed to a spot on the western edge of the map. They didn't go far, he said. He said found traces of blood and tire marks outside the south gate. They switched cars, took her underground. And warehouse district? He nodded. That's Castellano turf, I muttered. Luca hesitated. And if we go in now, we start a war. I looked him dead in the eye. And started the moment he touched her. I armed myself in silence. 2 Glocks, a combat knife, a custom-made shoulder holster with a silencer already mounted. I'd done this before, but never for someone I loved, never for my future. This wasn't business. This was personal. Seraphina hours passed. No food, no water, just the light, the cold, the chains. I refused to break, even when the guard, a greasy, jittery man with yellow teeth and a twitching eye, came in to check on me. He leered. You're prettier up close. Touch me, I said softly, and I'll bite your fingers off. He laughed. But he didn't come closer. Because even chained, I didn't feel weak anymore. I was a woman carrying power. Alessio's baby, my baby. And for the first time, I realized something. This child wasn't a consequence. It was a weapon, a reason to survive. When the guard left, I started testing the chain, twisting my wrist just enough to feel where the metal gave the slightest slack. I worked the skin raw, didn't care. I had to be ready, because Alessio was coming. I could feel it. Every breath I took reminded me of him, of the way he touched me, held me, made love to me like I was something holy. He wouldn't let them keep me. And I wouldn't let them keep me either. Alessio, we arrived at the warehouse compound at 1:32 a.m. 4 black SUVs, no headlights, no announcements, just silence and death waiting in the dark. I stepped out first. Luca flanked me, so did Vano and Ricci, my 3 most ruthless men. We moved like ghosts, and then, gunfire. They knew we were coming. The first wave hit us outside the loading bay. 5 men, automatic weapons. We took them down in under 40 seconds. I didn't hesitate, didn't blink. Every bullet I fired was a prayer, and every man who dropped was one step closer to her. I stormed the upper levels while Luca and Vano cleared the rest. Then I saw it. A room, steel door, camera above it, flickering light underneath. I kicked it open with one booted foot, and there she was, chained, bleeding, but alive. Seraphina, I whispered. Her eyes snapped up. Alessio! Seraphina, the moment I saw him, covered in blood, eyes burning, I broke. The chains fell away like nothing. He crossed the room in seconds and grabbed me, wrapping his arms around me, pulling me into him like he needed proof I was real. I've got you, he whispered. I've got you, my angel. Tears streamed down my cheeks, but I didn't sob, not yet, because he wasn't done. Behind him I saw movement, one of the guards, raising his gun. Alessio! He spun, fired, one shot, the man dropped, then he turned back to me. You're safe, he said again, you're safe now. Chapter 13, The Silence Between Gunfire. Seraphina. The sound of sirens echoed in my ears, though none had been called. It was phantom noise, remnants of panic trapped in my skull. Alessio's strong arms carried me from the warehouse like I was made of porcelain. I wasn't even sure my feet could touch the ground without crumbling. The night air bit at my exposed skin. I didn't know where my jacket had gone, or my shoes. But I clung to him like a lifeline. His heartbeat thumped strong and steady against my ear. He never said a word. And that silence scared me more than the gunshot. We didn't return to the estate. It was compromised. Instead, we drove 3 hours through winding hills and dense fog until we reached a private safe house tucked between the cliffs and the sea. It looked like nothing. A ruined cottage, barely standing, moss clinging to the stone like a second skin. But inside, it was a fortress, reinforced windows, bulletproof doors, medical supplies, weapons, and peace. Or the illusion of it. The minute the door shut behind us, Alessio finally let me go. He dropped to his knees in front of me, as if gravity had finally caught up to the weight on his shoulders. His hands shook as he reached for my face. "Did they hurt you?" His voice was hoarse, rough like it had been torn from his throat. "No," I whispered. "Not really. They didn't get the chance." His gaze swept over me. "Your lip is split. Your wrists." I pulled my sleeves down, hiding the angry red marks. "They're nothing." He looked up at me like he didn't believe that. Like he'd carry the pain for me if he could. Then he leaned forward, slow, cautious, reverent, and pressed his lips to the barely there swell of my stomach. "I swear to you," he whispered, "no one will ever touch either of you again." And I believed him, even though I shouldn't have. Alessio, she slept in my arms that night. Not because she asked me to stay, but because I refused to leave. Even as her breathing deepened and the tension bled from her muscles, I didn't close my eyes. Not once. I watched the shadows shift across the room. I listened for footsteps, wind, anything unnatural, and I thought about what I would do to Marco Castellano once I got my hands on him. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was, he'd known exactly where to find her, which meant someone had told him, someone close to me. By dawn, I was back in my war room, this time portable, set up inside the safe house's bunker. Vano and Luca flanked me. "So, and you trust them?" I asked quietly, staring at the small spread of names before me. My top lieutenants, the ones who'd had access to Seraphina's movements. Vano nodded. Luca didn't. "Quite. Too many loose lips," Luca muttered. "Too many scared men. You think Marco got in without help? No way. He had a mole," I agreed. Luca pointed to a name on the list. Raffaele, my cousin. Blood. He was missing the night she was taken. Said he was dealing with a shipment delay. Where? He couldn't say. Vano looked uneasy. "It'd be coincidence." "And so it could be betrayal," I muttered. "And in this world, I never gave a second chance for betrayal." Seraphina. I woke with sunlight filtering through gauzy curtains. For a moment, I forgot everything, where I was, what I'd been through, who I was now. Then I sat up, and the pain reminded me. The world outside this room was cruel, but this room, it was safe. I walked barefoot to the small vanity in the corner and stared at myself in the mirror. Hair tangled, lips cracked, a faint bruise beneath my jaw, and yet my hand went instinctively to my belly, small, barely showing, but alive. I smiled. It was the first time I truly felt the baby, not just a physical presence, but a person. Ours. The door creaked, and Alessio stepped in carrying a tray. His shirt was wrinkled, sleeves pushed up, gun holstered at his hip like a permanent extension of himself. But his eyes, they were soft when they landed on me. "You're awake," I nodded. "I'm okay. You don't have to be. I know." He set the tray down beside me, scrambled eggs, toast, tea. I reached for the cup, fingers trembling just slightly. "Have you slept?" "No." "Alessio, I can't," he said. "Not until I find who gave you up." I swallowed. "You think it was someone close?" "I know it." And the rage in his voice was quiet, but sharp. A knife hidden in silk. Later that afternoon, I followed him downstairs. I shouldn't have. But I needed to know. I needed to see what kind of man I'd fallen for. And I did. He stood across from Raffaele in the underground vault, hands behind his back, voice calm. "Where were you the night she was taken?" "I told you, dealing with the shipment." "No cameras at the docks," Alessio interrupted. No witness. You turned off your phone for 5 hours. Raffaele started sweating. You don't think I'd betray you? I don't think, Alessio said. I know. Then he drew his gun, no hesitation, just steel and silence. I flinched, but I didn't look away. And neither did Raffaele. You were like a brother to me, Alessio whispered. Then he pulled the trigger. The shot rang out like thunder in a cage. Raffaele crumpled, lifeless. Blood pooled across the concrete. Alessio holstered his gun without a word and turned away. Our eyes met. I should have been afraid. But I wasn't, because this was the man who would kill the world to protect me. And I loved him for it. Chapter 14. Letters Written in Blood. Seraphina. I'd never watched someone die before Raffaele. Never felt the crack of a gunshot vibrate through my bones with such finality. The look in Alessio's eyes afterward was worse than the sound of the shot. He didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't even look sorry. And maybe that was what scared me the most. Not that he could kill so easily, but that he was willing to do it for me. How far would he go? How much of his soul would he burn before there was nothing left? The hours after the execution passed in a slow, surreal haze. I tried to eat. I tried to sleep. I even tried to distract myself by folding laundry I'd already folded twice. But all I could hear was that sound, that cold snap of gunpowder and steel. That sound, for me, by the time Alessio found me sitting in the garden behind the safe house, curled on a wooden bench beneath a creeping ivy trellis, I hadn't spoken in hours. Cold? He asked softly, offering a cashmere blanket from behind. I took it, nodded. He sat beside me without a word. Our shoulders brushed. His scent was firewood, gun oil, and something warm underneath. Do you hate me? He asked, voice low. I looked at him sharply. No, you should. Why? I killed my cousin. I wrapped the blanket tighter around my shoulders. You didn't kill your cousin. You killed a traitor. He let out a slow, bitter breath. Same thing in this world. We sat in silence. For a while, the wind was the only thing that spoke between us. It rustled the trees like they were whispering about what we'd become. Then I broke the quiet. I was scared, I said. Not of you, not really, but of what you had to become to save me. He turned to me, his jaw tightening. You think I became something new? I hesitated, and he smiled, but it was a sad, broken kind of smile. I didn't become anything, Seraphina. I've always been this. Alessio, the war started with whispers. Supply lines rerouted, safe houses burned. One of my lieutenants found shot in his car, his wedding ring missing, his tongue nailed to the dashboard. Marco's message was clear. He wanted me to suffer, but I wasn't afraid of pain. I thrived on it. And now, I had a reason to survive every bullet, every betrayal. Her, our child. And that meant I couldn't make mistakes. I couldn't hesitate. Raffaele had been the first cut, but he wouldn't be the last. It was Luca who found the package. It arrived at the main gates by drone. No fingerprints, no traceable origin. Just a small box wrapped in plain brown paper. Inside, it held only 3 things: a flash drive, a single pearl earring, a letter. My blood ran cold. The earring was Seraphina's, the one she lost the night I first brought her to my estate. The letter was handwritten in sharp, angry pen strokes. You've taken what's mine, Alessio. Now I'll take what's yours, piece by piece. Let's see if she's still yours after she learns the truth. The flash drive held grainy footage. I watched it alone, and I shattered the monitor when it ended. Seraphina. I found Alessio in the study that night. Glass shards littered the floor. One of the chairs had been split in half, the leg still smoldering from where he'd set fire to it. He didn't notice me. Not at first. He stood before the fire, his fists clenched, blood oozing down his knuckles. Alessio. His head turned slowly, but the moment his eyes met mine, the storm in him paused. Come here, he whispered. I walked to him. He pulled me into his chest like he needed to feel my heartbeat to calm his own. But there was something different in his embrace, a kind of desperation I hadn't felt before. What happened? I asked. He didn't answer. He just held me tighter. Later, when he thought I was asleep, I heard him on the phone. No, he growled. I don't care what it takes. I want Marco's head. A pause. I don't give a damn if it costs me everything. Find out who else he's turned. No more delays. No more mercy. Another pause. Then the clincher. She can't ever know. I froze in bed, my breath caught, and suddenly the warmth in my belly, the comfort that had carried me through the darkness, turned cold. What doesn't he want me to know? The next morning I searched the study while he was out with Luca, and I found the box, the one with the earring, the letter, and the flash drive. I should have stopped, should have waited, but I plugged it into the laptop, and what I saw unraveled everything. Footage, years old, a warehouse, a woman tied to a chair, crying, pleading. Her name, barely audible beneath the static. Julia? Alessio's voice, calm, brutal. Thought you knew the rules. No one betrays the famiglia. A gun, a shot, a woman's scream, then silence. My fingers trembled as I paused the video. Julia, the woman in the footage, Marco Castellano's sister. Alessio had killed her. Chapter 15. The Cost of Truth. Seraphina. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a second. I lay in the massive bed that once felt like a fortress, staring at the ceiling with the flash drive still clutched in my hand, as if letting it go would somehow make it less real. The woman in the video, Julia, had a face, a voice, terror in her eyes, and that voice, his voice, Alessio's voice, calm and controlled as he pulled the trigger. It was burned into my mind like fire on paper. He'd killed her, not in a raid, not in the heat of a firefight, but execution style, and her name, Julia Castellano, was not just anyone, she was Marco's sister, which meant everything I thought I knew had another side, and I was starting to wonder if I'd ever truly known the man who held me at night and whispered promises to my unborn child. He returned just after sunrise, blood on his knuckles, a cut above his brow, no words, just the sound of the door locking behind him. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, flash drive out in the open on the table beside me. He saw it, and the world stopped. "Where did you find that?" His voice was low, lethal. But beneath the ice I heard something else. Fear, real fear. "Did you think I wouldn't?" I said softly, my hands trembling despite my best efforts. "You left it in your study." He didn't move. He just stared at it, like it was a loaded gun. Then he said, "You watched it. It wasn't a question." I nodded once, and the silence that followed felt like glass shattering between us. "And you lied to me," I said. "No," he said quietly. "I never told you about her. That's not the same as lying." "Don't do that," I snapped, standing. "Don't play your mafia semantics with me. You executed a woman, Alessio." "Since she was a traitor," he said without flinching. "She was Marco's sister, and she tried to kill my brother." I froze. That wasn't in the video. "What?" Alessio exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding that breath for years. "Seduced him," he said, voice hardening. "Fed information to Marco behind our backs. My brother was ambushed, tortured, left for dead in the jungle outside Jakarta. They carved our crest into his chest as a warning." I staggered back a step, shocked. "I made a promise to our father that day," he continued. "In it I'd clean house. No traitors, no leniency." I stared at him. "And so you killed her?" "Then I gave her a choice. A choice. Family or betrayal, she chose wrong. And you executed her. Cold, like it meant nothing." "No," he whispered. "Like it meant everything." I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. My vision blurred with tears I didn't even feel falling. He came closer, but I backed away. "I need to trust you," I said, "not just as a lover, not just because you're the father of this baby, but because I don't know how to love someone I'm afraid of." He flinched, actually flinched. "I'm not afraid you'll hurt me," I said. "I'm afraid you'll break me and not even realize you've done it." He stepped forward again, this time slower. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to see that part of me," he said. "Not yet. Not while I'm trying so hard to be the man you think I am." "Then who are you, Alessio?" He looked up at me. And what I saw there wasn't the mafia boss. It wasn't the killer. It was the boy beneath the blood and power and legacy. The boy who lost everything to a war he was born into. "I'm the man who would do anything to protect you," he whispered. "Even lie? Yes. Even kill again? Yes. Even if it means I leave." He hesitated, his jaw clenched. And then he said the only word that broke me more than silence. "Yes, Alessio, I watched her walk away from me, down the corridor, into the other bedroom, the one we hadn't used, the one with no shared memories, and I didn't stop her. Because I'd promised her the truth, and this was the price. The war escalated fast after that. 3 of Marco's fronts were burned to the ground. We found one of his enforcers flayed and nailed to a tree just outside our perimeter. A warning. Vano reported increased chatter from the Eastern European syndicates. Some were looking to capitalize on our chaos. And through it all, Seraphina didn't speak to me for 2 days. She still slept in the safe house. Still ate. Still touched her stomach like it was the one thing anchoring her to this world. But not once did she look me in the eye. On the 3rd night, she stood in the kitchen in her robe, pouring a glass of water. I watched her from the doorway, and for the first time I noticed the subtle shift in her posture, the faint curve of her stomach. It wasn't just a secret anymore, it was real. Alive, growing, half of her, half of me. And I realized something terrifying. I'd rather face 100 enemies with guns pointed at my head than go one more night with her silence cutting me in half. "I thought you were asleep," she said, not turning. "I can't sleep when you're not beside me." She didn't respond. I stepped closer, and then so quietly she whispered, "I'm scared." I stopped moving. "Not of you," she said. "Of me, of what I'll become if I keep loving you like this." I swallowed the knot in my throat. "You'll become someone powerful." "No," she said. "I'll become someone dangerous, just like you." She turned then, and our eyes locked. "I'm pregnant with the baby of a man who kills," she said, "and who lies, who protects by destroying, and you're pregnant with the child of a man who would die to keep you safe." "Sent, I don't want you to die for me," she said, her voice cracking. "I want you to live. I want to raise this baby with someone who won't let the darkness swallow him whole." I closed the distance between us in 2 steps, took her face in my hands. "Help me, Seraphina," I said. "Don't walk away. Don't shut me out. Help me find a reason to climb out of the dark." And finally, she leaned into me and kissed me like she still believed we could be saved. Chapter 16. Something inside me is breaking. Seraphina, at first, it was just a flutter, a strange tightening low in my belly, like something inside me had clenched and wouldn't let go. Then the pain hit, hot, sudden, deep. I dropped the teacup I was holding, the porcelain shattering across the marble kitchen floor, and grabbed the edge of the counter to keep from falling. "Seraphina." Alessio was there in seconds, his hands around my waist, his voice sharp and terrified. "What's wrong?" I don't know," I whispered, gasping. "And to baby, it hurts, Alessio, something's wrong." They rushed me to the safe house's medical wing, an underground facility beneath the property, shielded by biometric locks and walls thick enough to withstand a grenade blast. But none of that mattered, because I couldn't stop shaking, and my hands were covered in blood. Alessio, the doctor's gloves were soaked in crimson. Seraphina lay on the table, barely conscious, her skin pale and slick with sweat. Monitors beeped in rapid rhythm, and the smell of antiseptic clashed horribly with the metallic scent of blood. I stood at the end of the room like a man possessed, unable to touch her, unable to fix this. Luca put a hand on my shoulder. "She's strong," he said, but his voice trembled. "She's bleeding out, Luca. We'll stop it." "If I lose her," I whispered, "there's no coming back from it." The doctor's voice cut through the chaos. "She's experiencing placental abruption. We have to stabilize her now, or we risk losing both her and the baby." I moved toward the table. "What do you need?" "Blood," he said. "Fast. We need to run compatibility." "She's O negative," I snapped. "So am I." "Take what you need." It felt like hours. I sat in the hallway, my arm bandaged, the IV port still in. Blood soaked my shirt where I'd clutched her hand before they wheeled her away. Luca stood guard, silent. No words passed between us. Until finally the doctor emerged. "Say she's stable," he said. I didn't hear anything after that, just the roaring rush of breath that finally returned to my lungs. Seraphina. I woke up in a white room, dim light, a slow beeping. I was alive, but I could feel something in me had changed. Alessio sat at the edge of the bed, his head bowed in his hands, the usually impenetrable wall of his strength cracked open like glass. "Hey," I whispered. His head jerked up instantly. "Hey," he said, rushing to my side. "What happened?" "You scared the shit out of me," he choked. "Is the baby—" He kissed my knuckles gently. "The baby's strong," he said, "just like their mother." I smiled weakly, but the memory of the pain still lingered, like a warning. "This isn't over." Later, the doctor explained everything: the stress, the trauma, the elevated blood pressure, the impact of physical and emotional strain. I wasn't just carrying a child in a mafia war zone. I was slowly unraveling. He gave Alessio strict instructions: she must rest, no movement, no adrenaline, no more stress. And Alessio nodded with deadly seriousness, then had 2 guards posted inside the room, around the clock, and cancelled all external meetings. I didn't leave the bed for 4 days. Alessio, but the world didn't stop turning just because the love of my life nearly died. Marco didn't wait. He struck like a wolf sensing weakness. The Castellano estate in Verona was hit first. 2 of my men killed, their bodies strung from the gates with a message carved into their chests: family for family, blood for blood. Then he moved on my father's villa in Sicily, burned it to the ground. And I knew what was coming next. Me. And Seraphina. I met with Luca and Vano in the war room, a massive steel and concrete bunker beneath the estate. "She's not safe here anymore," Luca said. "I'm not leaving her," I replied. "Then we move the battlefield," Vano growled. "Force Marco's hand, draw him out." I stared at the map, at the list of safe houses, allies, resources, and made a decision that could cost me everything. We bring the war to him. Seraphina. I knew something was coming. Alessio stopped sleeping. He barely left the war room. His phone buzzed at all hours. And when he came to check on me, he looked at me like he might never see me again. I hated that look. So on the 5th day, when he sat beside me and held my hand like it was the only thing keeping him grounded, I asked the question: "Are you going to kill him?" He didn't lie. "Yes," I nodded. "Will it end it?" His eyes softened. "No, but it'll give us a chance to run." "Run where?" "Somewhere the war can't touch us." I reached for his hand. "I don't want to run anymore," I said. "I want to fight. But not for your territory, not for revenge, for us, for this baby, for something bigger than blood." He kissed my hand, and promised me everything, even if it killed him. Chapter 17. The Devil's Last Dance. Alessio, I chose the battleground. A ruined monastery on the outskirts of Calabria. Long abandoned. Half collapsed under centuries of silence and history and buried sins. Fitting, that's what this had always been. A holy war twisted into something unrecognizable. Not about power anymore, not even blood. Just vengeance and survival. The morning of the ambush, the air hung heavy with fog, ghostly, as if the world knew this day would be written in fire and bone. I wore black, no vest, no insignia, just me, my Glock, and the memory of everyone I'd lost. I had 40 men hidden in the ruins, snipers on the ridges, explosives rigged at the eastern arch. And still, I felt exposed, because I knew Marco. He'd come prepared, he always did. He arrived at dawn, 3 black SUVs, 6 motorcycles, a trail of smoke in their wake. I stood in the clearing with Luca at my back, every sense on fire. The first door opened, and out stepped Marco Castellano, dressed in tailored gray, cigarette between his fingers, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He looked like a man who already thought he'd won. "You're getting soft, D'Angelo," he said, flicking ash onto the sacred ground. "Meeting me here, no throne, no guards, no bullets in my chest yet. I'm disappointed." "You will be," I said. "I promise." He chuckled. "You know what I want," he said. "Her, and your baby. Or I'll burn every piece of your empire to ash." I didn't blink. "You'll never touch her." "Then I guess I'll have to kill you first." It happened fast. He snapped his fingers. Gunfire erupted from the trees. My men returned fire, and the ancient monastery became a war zone. Seraphina. They tried to keep me locked in the medical wing, 2 guards at the door, orders from Alessio. But I'd stolen the code from Luca's phone, and I knew something was wrong the moment the alarms blared, and the ground shook from the first explosion. I ran, down the corridors, past bleeding soldiers, through the underground tunnel Alessio had shown me once, half drunk and whispering about escape plans. I emerged just behind the monastery chapel, and I saw hell, Smoke, bodies, gunfire echoing like thunder across stone, and at the center of it all, Alessio and Marco, circling each other like wolves. Alessio's face was bloodied, his arm grazed. Marco had a blade in one hand, a gun in the other, and they were screaming, about Giulia, about betrayal, about me. I couldn't move. Until Marco saw me. And smiled. Alessio when I saw Seraphina step into the clearing, blood still staining her white hospital gown. I lost focus for 1 second. 1. And Marco took it. He lunged, blade flashing. I turned too slow. The knife plunged into my side, white-hot pain erupting through my ribs. But I didn't fall. I drove my fist into his throat. He stumbled. I grabbed his wrist, twisted. The blade dropped, and I put my gun to his temple. He smiled, even then. "Do it," he whispered. I hesitated. "Alessio," Seraphina's voice, shaking, terrified, real. And I realized something in that second. Killing Marco wouldn't end this, but letting him live would be a lifetime of war. I looked into his eyes, and I pulled the trigger. The shot echoed across the ruins. Marco's body crumpled to the ground, blood pooling into the dust. And just like that, it was over. Seraphina, he collapsed seconds after. I screamed his name, running toward him, dropping to my knees in the dirt. Blood poured from his side. I pressed my hands to the wound, sobbing. "Oh, stay with me, Alessio! Stay with me." He looked at me with those storm-gray eyes, and smiled. "You're here. Don't talk, just stay awake. Please." "And so I love you," I sobbed. "I love you too." Luca and Vano rushed in. The medics followed. They dragged him away from Marco's body and into the emergency vehicle parked behind the chapel, and I climbed in beside him, holding his hand, whispering promises to the baby growing inside me. "We'll make it. We have to, Alessio." I woke up 3 days later, IV in my arm, Seraphina asleep on the chair beside me, one hand on my chest, the other curled protectively over her belly, and for the first time in my life, I felt safe. Chapter 18. And the sky broke open. Seraphina, it began with thunder. Not just from the sky, but inside me. Something deep and seismic shifted the moment I opened my eyes that morning. I couldn't explain it, but every instinct in me screamed that today would be different. The villa was too quiet. The rain tapping against the tall windows felt louder than usual, and there was a scent in the air, earthy, electric, like something ancient was about to be born. I sat up, one hand resting on my swollen belly, the other still tangled in the bedsheets Alessio had wrapped around me hours earlier after whispering promises into my skin. But now, he was gone, and something was coming. The first contraction hit at 10:47 a.m. It wasn't subtle, sharp, low, immediate. It dragged a cry out of me that startled the guards outside the door. I gripped the wall, sweat blooming on my temples. This wasn't like before. This was real. The baby was coming. They rushed me to the private birthing suite in the West Wing, beneath flickering chandeliers and down echoing halls. Luca was already shouting orders into his comms, demanding the midwife be flown in now. But I knew we wouldn't make it in time. Alessio was still at Marco's burial. And I was going to do this without him. Alessio, I shouldn't have gone. The priest's words were a blur. The casket was closed, but I didn't need to see Marco's face to remember it. I'd seen it too many times. Giulia's grave wasn't far from here. She'd been buried beneath a cluster of black cypress trees, unmarked except for a small marble plaque with her name carved in Latin. He'd had it installed secretly. Fidelitas usque ad mortem, loyalty unto death, as if that word had ever meant anything to him. I stood alone beside the open grave, rain soaking through my coat, fists clenched at my sides. Vano approached, stepping quietly over muddy stone. "There's something you need to see," he said. He handed me a small black envelope sealed with red wax. I tore it open with wet, shaking fingers. Inside was a letter, written in Marco's hand, to Alessio D'Angelo, my brother in blood, my rival in everything else. "If you're reading this, I'm already dead. Good. But you need to know one thing before you bury me and think you've won. I was never your biggest threat. She was. Your woman. Your perfect Seraphina. She was mine first. Seraphina, I screamed until I went hoarse. Luca held my hand through the entire labor, soaked in sweat and terrified beyond reason. "You're doing amazing," he kept saying. "He's almost here. Just one more push." The pain was like fire and thunder and lightning combined, cracking my spine open from the inside. But then, he cried. A sound that split the heavens. A perfect, wrinkled, red-faced little boy placed on my chest. I couldn't speak. I just sobbed and whispered, "You're safe. You're safe now. Mama's got you. Alessio." I dropped the letter. It hit the mud and vanished in the rain. I didn't believe it. Couldn't. But doubt is a quiet, vicious thing. And Marco knew that. He planted the seed before he died, and now it grew with every step I took back toward the villa. Could she have ever loved him? Could she have lied? No, not my Seraphina. But I had to know. Seraphina. He entered the birthing suite just as the baby wrapped his tiny fist around my finger. Alessio stood in the doorway, dripping with rain and war. Our eyes met. But something was wrong. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't crying. He was cold. My heart dropped. Alessio? He stepped inside, looked at the baby, and then at me, and whispered, "Is he mine?" Chapter 19, Who do you think I am? Seraphina, is he mine? The question hit harder than any contraction, any bullet, any betrayal I'd ever endured. I stared up at Alessio from the hospital bed, my son bundled against my chest, his warm breath like tiny gusts against my collarbone. I blinked. Once, twice, but he didn't take it back, didn't flinch, didn't move, just stood there, stoic, cold, and soaked to the bone in more than just rain. His jaw was tight, his fists clenched, and behind his eyes, something inside him was unraveling. "Say it again," I whispered. My voice shook. Not from weakness, but fury. His silence was answer enough. "Say it again, Alessio. Say what you just said to the woman who almost died giving birth to your child." He swallowed, but still, no apology, no backpedaling. Just the letter he slowly pulled from his coat and dropped at the foot of the bed like a gauntlet. I looked down at it, red wax seal broken, Marco Castellano's name printed in that signature, sharp-edged hand. A cold chill crept down my spine. I forced myself to speak. "What did he tell you?" "That you were his," Alessio said quietly. "Before you were mine." It felt like my entire body went numb, not because of the accusation, but because for a moment, I realized he believed it. That after everything we'd endured, everything I had suffered, bleeding, bound, hunted, he still thought I could have betrayed him. I handed our son to the nurse beside me with gentle, shaking hands. Then, without another word, I pushed myself out of the bed. My body screamed in protest. Every stitch, every bone, every raw nerve flared like a warning siren. But I didn't stop. I stood, faced him. And I let my rage show. "You think I was his?" Alessio's throat bobbed. "Just answer me." "No," I said. "You answer me. Who do you think I am, Alessio?" He didn't speak, so I gave him the answer myself. "I'm the woman who carried your child through a fletching war. I'm the woman who was kidnapped for being yours, who bled for you, who stayed for you, and you look me in the face and ask if the child I almost died for is yours." The silence was louder than thunder. Tears threatened, but I refused to let them fall. "Not now." "Do you love me?" I asked. "Yes." "Then believe me. Because if you don't, if this is all it takes to break you, then you never really loved me at all." "Alessio, I should have known better. I did know better. But Marco always knew where to cut. He knew my scars, the voices I still carried, the parts of me that never healed. The boy in me who lost his mother to a traitor, the man who had to kill to keep his family's name alive. He used that fear like a weapon. And I let him. I watched the woman I loved stand, bleeding and bruised and shaking, and still strong enough to face me down with fire in her eyes. And I realized I'd broken the only thing that mattered. "I'm sorry," I said. "It wasn't enough. I was wrong. Still not enough." "Marco wrote that letter to hurt me," I continued, "to ruin what I still had left, and I let him. I let a dead man poison what we've built." She said nothing, just stared at me with wide, wet eyes and heartbreak carved into every inch of her expression. "I believe you," I whispered. "I believe you, Seraphina. I never should have doubted you." Her voice cracked. "Then prove it." Seraphina, he came to my side, fell to his knees, placed one palm gently against my stomach even though the baby was no longer there, and the other over his heart. I swear to you, he whispered, there will never be another war inside this home, not between us, not ever again. My body trembled, but finally, the wall inside me cracked, and I fell into his arms, sobbing against the shoulder of the man who broke me just a little, and still, I loved him enough to let him put me back together. Because forgiveness doesn't come from perfection, it comes from love, and ours had been forged in fire. That night, Alessio held his son for the first time with tears in his eyes, and he whispered to him, "You'll never know war the way I did. You'll know power, but not pain, and you'll know love, because I'll make damn sure you see how your mother changed me." We named him Giovanni Alessio D'Angelo, John, the rebirth, and Alessio, for the man who had to lose everything before he found his soul again. Chapter 20. A kingdom built from ashes. The storm had passed, in every sense of the word. Outside the D'Angelo estate, spring had crept back into the hills like an apology. The grass was fresh with dew, birds flitted between marble arches, and new roses were blooming along the southern terrace Seraphina had once bled on. Inside, peace reigned, for the first time in years. But peace in a mafia empire was like sunlight on a battlefield. It never lasted. Seraphina. It had been 7 weeks since Giovanni was born. 7 weeks of sleepless nights, midnight feedings, and Alessio tiptoeing into the nursery with a gentleness no one who knew him would believe. He had changed, in the way only a man on the edge of death could change. No longer just the capo of the D'Angelo dynasty, he was a father, a husband in every way but name, and a man who had finally put his weapons down, not because the war was over, but because he had finally found something more precious than vengeance. But the ghosts of old kings don't fade quietly, and neither do their debts. Alessio stood at the head of the long obsidian table, flanked by Luca and Matteo, with his father's empty chair still unclaimed at the far end. The D'Angelo family had gathered. Not just blood, loyalists, soldiers, generals. Whispers had reached them from the south. Remnants of the Castellano clan had resurfaced, under a new name, under a new leader, one of Marco's bastard sons, young, reckless, hungry for blood, a final threat. Alessio's voice was a low growl when he spoke. He's demanding tribute. Luca swore. What kind? Alessio tossed the letter onto the table. Giovanni, silence, complete and chilling. They wanted my son, Seraphina. When I read the letter, I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't flinch. I simply folded it once, handed it back to Alessio, and said, "Then we end this. For good." The final confrontation wasn't a bloodbath. It wasn't a shootout or a high-speed chase or a betrayal in the garden like so many before. It was a choice. Alessio stood at the gates of the ruined Castellano vineyard, gun in one hand, baby monitor in the other, and made his final demand. "This is your one chance," he told the boy they called Il Serpente. "You can start over, or you can end here." The boy spat at his feet. Alessio didn't blink. 2 seconds later, Matteo pulled the trigger from the shadows. And just like that, the last of the Castellanos was buried where he stood. No security, no guns, no guards posted along the hedges. Only family. Only light. Seraphina wore a gown spun from champagne silk and draped with a veil Alessio had designed himself, cut from the same fabric as the first dress she ever wore for him. She walked down the aisle alone, because she had brought herself back from hell, and at the altar, Alessio cried for the second time in his life. The first time was when Giovanni was born. Their vows were not written, they were spoken from memory, from war, from wounds, from survival. "I vow," Seraphina whispered, "to never run again. Not from you, not from us. I vow to build a world where our son never has to choose between fear and family." Alessio's voice cracked. "And I vow to never be the monster I once had to be. You showed me how to be more. You made me more." They kissed like it was the first time. And in a way, it was epilogue. Years later, Giovanni D'Angelo was 5 years old the first time he held a violin. 6 when he corrected Luca's Italian grammar. 7 when he asked his mother why people bowed when his father walked into a room. Seraphina smiled and knelt down beside him. "They bow because your father used to be a king," she said. And what is he now? Gio asked, big eyes wide. Seraphina kissed his forehead. Now? Now he's mine. In the south garden of the D'Angelo Villa, Alessio stood with one hand wrapped around Seraphina's waist, and the other lifted to the sky where fireworks bloomed like blood-stained stars. He kissed her temple and whispered, "From ashes, we built a kingdom." And Seraphina, queen of a broken throne, whispered back, "No, we built a home." The end. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you loved it, kindly comment below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more amazing content. Drop a comment with your favorite moment, and I'll see you in the next one.